Welcome to The Aspiring Kryptonians, a podcast for Superman fans, hosted by Superman fans and focused around all things, you guessed it, Superman. After all, we are aspiring Kryptonians. From comics, TV, film and animation, each week we discuss our thoughts on the latest releases, news and even some retrospective reviews. So without further ado, let's get the show on the road. Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Aspiring Kryptonians podcast with me, Tasman, and the rest of the team, Evan.
Hello.
And Ashley.
Hi guys.
And today we've also got a fourth guest with us, so please welcome our very first guest on the podcast and current writer of both the Superman and Action Comics titles, as well as the Future State issues, Worlds of War and House of L. We have writer Phillip Kennedy Johnson with us today. Hello.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Woohoo!
Thank you. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. We've been really excited to record this, obviously, because it's the first guest, and in some cases, some of our first interviews. So, yeah, thank you. How are you doing? I'm
great, thanks. I'm just trying to keep up with all the news today and keep the scripts, cranking out.
Yeah, there has been a lot of Superman news today, actually. I've been trying to frantically write it up in the background for the website, but yeah, so usually we have a bit of a structure to our podcast whereby we talk about the latest Superman news and comics and stuff, but because it's kind of a special occasion, we're going to scrap that all completely and just have an open discussion with you about your history with Superman, the character, your future state issues, and of course the current titles, if that's okay with you.
Sure thing.
Well, I guess it's kind of a little bit structured because I've split into sections, but we'll see. So we'll start with your career then. So you're quite a busy man. I've just checked out your website bio. So you're a soldier, a writer, a musician, and a teacher. First of all, how do you find the time?
Oh man, well, it's easy. You just struggle constantly. That's the truth. Currently, I'm not actually teaching much. I used to have like a studio of music students, but currently it's all kind of on hold currently. So it's just me right now. But yeah, I still have the active duty soldier gig when I'm not doing this.
Yeah,
and it's a lot to keep up with, but make time for the things you care about. And I'm not willing to give up the job just yet. And I really love writing, of course, and especially now some of the books I get to do is just a dream come true. So I'm trying to make it all work.
What is it that got you into those roles? What, particularly the soldier role?
Well, I've been a musician my whole life, and growing up as a kid, I wanted to be a comic artist, and I also wanted to be a musician though. And I just sort of fell into the musician job after a while. Like in high school, I started to really gravitate towards music more. And I went to college for it. I wanted to be a musician, and I found out about the military jobs in Washington, D.C., and I just really became very taken with those ensembles and wanted to be a part of them. So I did some other things first. I was in the Glenn Miller Band for a while. I did some other, like freelance for a while, but eventually I auditioned for the U.S. Army Field Band in Washington, D.C., and it worked out. So I'm here now, and it's a very prestigious group, great musicians. I believe in the work that we do. So I've still been here. And during that time, in an effort to help my younger brother who wanted to become a comic artist as well,
yeah,
I started doing a lot of writing as a way to kind of give him scripts to illustrate because he didn't really have any sequentials. So I was kind of just educating myself about the comic industry as a way to kind of help him to learn as well. So we were kind of doing it together.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's a good kid, and he didn't know how to continue on that path, and I didn't either. I always loved comics, but at that point I hadn't been reading them in a while either. So it gave me an excuse to get back into it and started going to conventions and seeing what the state of the art looked like now. And because the last time I was reading comics, Superman had a mullet, and
there you go.
Yeah, Batman was John Paul Valley, and it was just a very different scene back then. So it was cool to get back into it and see everything that happened since then, and how crazy the industry looked compared to what I remember.
Speaking of the comics industry, I want to ask you, why comics? What puts that medium apart from the other mediums you could be writing for?
Well, yeah, it was mostly because because of my brother's journey, like what he wanted to do. The path had always been, the plan was always to make comics with him.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was always kind of the reason, but also because I really just got the bug. I mean, like when I started looking into the industry and how the whole thing worked and how how scripts are made and how how collaborative the medium is, it just made a lot of sense to me. I really dug it. I loved a lot of what I found. And as a jazz musician, it just looks very familiar. I mean, honestly, the way that a comic comes together is not unlike a small group jazz combo. And I love how if you change out any one member of the team, the finished product totally changes and everyone reacts off of what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It just made a lot of sense to me. I love the collaborative nature of it. And I love how every artist I work with just makes a totally different kind of story.
How do you think your career and sort of life experience have influenced the writing? So not just on the Superman side of comics, but just in general.
Well, for a long time, I felt like most of my stories were about America in some way, about kind of our failings and how we could be better. And but as my life has changed, the themes underneath the work have changed also. Like now I feel like a lot of my stories are about my son in some way. I have a really awesome relationship with him, and he just means a lot to me. So a lot of the stuff that I write now is about him. Little things in my life definitely find their way in, as far as like my military background and my time as a musician. I write a lot of music actually for my comics, like in The Last God and other things. Like sometimes there's music on the page that I've written or back matter things. I found it to be a very concise way to world build and to sneak like world building details into a story and make it seem real and authentic.
Yeah. The reason I asked that is because when I was reading, I've read it before anyway, but I did a quick reread of Worlds of War issue 1, and I think it's like one of the first few pages when they're in the Smallville celebration, I noticed that there were 2 army men on the page, and then there was also a musician in the corner. So I just thought maybe you'd brought those in for that reason.
Yeah, well, the soldiers were there, like those guys are meant to be recruiters, and it makes sense to me that those guys would be around a place like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I see the kinds of places where recruiters tend to hang out, and I think it's plausible they are in a town like that, and also at an event like that they would just kind of be trolling for young people.
Yeah.
And the musician thing, yeah, it just seemed like I was trying to think of all the kitschy little things that people might sell at a kind of a street festival place like that. I've been to Roswell several times.
Oh yeah.
And it has a very similar vibe to what I was trying to capture in that issue. Like the whole town is just engulfed in that alien thing. Like you go to Arby's and there's like, it's the alien Arby's, like everything, everywhere you go.
There's a spaceship parked in the driveway or something,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make it like that and just have all these little bits of, supposedly Kryptonian junk that you could pick up, and most of it's all BS, but it's, everyone's trying to make a buck off of it.
You say that, but I'll be the one to go there and buy absolutely everything.
Yeah, I mean, I would too, honestly.
I did have a question for you, because to me it reminded me of Metropolis, Illinois. The way you did.
I have not been there, but yeah,
really?
that's the kind of thing that we're looking for. Yeah.
Awesome.
I have seen pictures of the big statue and all that, but I've never actually been to there's like a festival there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, every year.
Yes.
I haven't been yet, but I really want to go.
Yeah, I've not been either. I did go to there's, what's it called, man? There's a museum.
The like Hall of Heroes Museum?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is down the street from my house.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I've been there.
I guess not down the street. It's like half hour away, but it's
close enough.
yeah.
Yeah. I was on tour. My band was on tour there, and our hotel was in that town, I think, that day. And I found out that it was there. I was like, well, I got to go see it. And in the pictures, it's this big impressive thing. It's like, it looks like the Hall of Justice kind of.
Yep.
And you show up, and it's just like a dude's house.
Yep.
That has been like.
Really?
Yeah, it's quite small.
They've moved it now, so now they have a.
Okay.
It's on the street now. It's on the main.
Yeah,
street.
nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it bigger than it was?
A little bit. Yeah, it's not 2 stories anymore, but it's like in a old, like it's in a former strip mall sort of thing, and now it's its own freestanding building.
Yeah, when I was there, the guy was like fundraising to do that. He told me that he wanted to move, but at the time he was on that little house.
I heard you talk about that on Word Balloon, and when you were talking about it, trying to remember the name, I'm like, it's the House of Hero, the Hall of Hero.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking somebody out there knows this, and I'm going to get in trouble for this.
Do you have any other sort of influences in your work? Again, not necessarily the Superman titles, but favorite writers or artists that have influenced your work in general?
Oh man, well, Mark Waid for sure. I really like his Superman work.
Yeah.
Grant Morrison, I mean, his All-Star Superman run is just the best, and I love how creative it is. I love how it just captures who Superman is, what he means to people. Just that. Some of those moments in that book sum him up so well. The moment where there's the girl, but the jumper that he saves from behind, that's an iconic moment they'll never forget. There's actually an early version of the script for Worlds of War in which she was actually the main character in that.
Okay.
Oh wow!
But I wanted her to be young though still, and this is meant to be years later, so it didn't quite track that she would be the same person.
That would have been a really nice touch though. Yeah,
at some point I'm going to bring her in. I really, that moment means a lot to me. So I'm going to try to find the perfect moment to bring her into the story.
Sweet.
Let's see. Yeah, moments like that, or the one where Clark is trying to save his dad in the flashback, and it's like he's catching on fire because he's going so fast. All these moments like that in that run that just encapsulate who he is to me. And in Kingdom Come, that moment was where he goes, well, a couple, like when he first appears on the bridge in costume, but also later when he goes into the bar, and there's like the superhero bar, and everyone's kind of douchey, and he walks in and everyone just like stops, like, oh my God, he's here.
Yeah.
Those moments just really, those are the ones I kind of hold on to when I'm writing the stories. I'm trying to make everyone pay attention like I did at those moments. Yeah.
So speaking of Superman, talking about him as a character, what was your first introduction to him?
My dad brought home a lot of ripped up old comics from garage sales and flea markets and things when I was very, very young, before I could read. I don't know if I read those Superman comics first or if I saw the movie first, the 1978 film. I don't remember which one came first, but I don't remember a time before I was reading Superman comics. Like, I don't know which one was my first copy but Superman has always been Christopher Reeve in my mind. And as well as those old Kurt Swan drawings as well. And I still, the earliest versions of Superman were probably Kurt Swan. That's still just deep in there as far as who, which artists I saw the most early on.
Yeah. So his artwork is pretty iconic as well. So as soon as you see a piece of his work, it's instantly recognizable.
Yeah, like the way Daniel draws him now, Daniel Samperi, he has that same kind of like mass to him that Kurt Swan's version did, which is kind of cool. I feel like Daniel's taken a lot of the most iconic versions of different artists over the years and has really built this classic version that's really great.
Yeah, I've seen a few of the bits that he's done. He's uploaded a few shots or panels on Twitter, and they look amazing.
I can't wait till you see the book. It's the first issue, I think, is next week, and I'm very excited. That's the one. Like, obviously, I'm very proud of the Superman series as well with Scott Godlewski, but the Action Comics one is the one I'm going to be on for a long time. and I'm just doing the one arc of Superman, and it's all meant to kind of funnel Clark's story into the Action Comics run, and then and set Tom up as well, Tom Taylor, for his run when his Superman story begins.
So what does the character, we're going to talk about the sort of the Tom Taylor and the new that's come out a little bit later on, but what does the character sort of mean to you?
What does Superman mean to me?
Yeah.
Man, I mean, he was my first hero. I mean, straight up. My relationship with my own dad was kind of complicated, and I didn't really have that kind of person to look up to, like a legit hero. You know, that was always Superman to me, and Batman as well. Like, they both represent very different power fantasies and very different just fantasies in general. But like, I want to be this. I mean, Batman was this character of this statement of, if I just work hard enough, if I'm smart enough and strong enough, I can make myself into this amazing superhuman thing. But Superman is such a different feeling. It's like this aspirational feeling of like, I can save everyone. I want to be so much more than I am. And that is summed up so well in moments of that first movie. And honestly, just the opening credits, where the credits start and then the music starts real low, and the S shield comes on screen and the trumpets are sailing, and it just makes you want to just yell and fly and save the world. And man, I can literally feel it in my bones right now. I just love that moment, and I tear up every time I see that moment in the movie.
Awesome.
And moments in the actual movie as well, like the helicopter scene, and like, it's just,
yeah, that was a great scene.
You see somebody so powerful, but also just so inherently good, and it makes you want to be that too. You know, like he represents the statement that he undoes the statement of ultimate power, absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, like he is the single embodiment of why that shouldn't be that way. You know. So that's what he is to me. He's just this belief that we can be so powerful, but also so good.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the way you described the difference between Batman and Superman, then it was kind of like Batman was the aspiration and Superman was the state of mind kind of thing.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. They're both so different. I got in the mood for one versus the other. If I was feeling particularly vengeful or wanted to do something like, it's like, I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
That's if I was feeling like I'm going to show you, that's kind of a Batman feeling, you know.
Yeah.
And but then I just, oh God, I love Superman so much. I can't even. It's hard to really describe the feeling that I would have, but. Like, wow. I would literally jump off of my house, like, and just pretending to be Superman. Like, he had where my dad built the house. There are these long eaves that kind of hang very far away from the body of the house itself, and there's these hills next to it. And I would literally tie something to my neck and
your neck.
Like a
tape. Oh, okay. You tie something to your neck and then jumping in the thing.
Yeah, watch this. No, I mean, like, no, like I would make a little cape or something, and I would jump off, like, and it was such a way, like the eaves were close enough to the hill that it wasn't like treacherous, not as treacherous as it might have been. Just to capture that one singular moment where I was flying, you know.
Yeah.
God, I would just. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not summing it up very well in word.
It's a hard question, isn't it? I suppose.
It represents this feeling that I'm constantly trying to capture, and I have had that moment in books occasionally, and I got more of them. I bring up Mark Waid and Grant Morrison because I probably had the most of those moments in those books, particularly. Sometimes there are others as well where I find it, and it's like, this is exactly right. This is exactly what Superman is.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to capture that all the time in the books. I'm just trying to capture these moments of showing everyone what it is. And that's what Worlds of War is, like, front to back, is trying to capture that feeling, you know.
Awesome.
Like the first issue was what we mean, what he means to us. And then the next issue is meant to be what we mean to him and how we, as lame as we are, we inspire him the same way that he inspired us. That's what those books are meant to capture.
And well, that definitely comes across.
Well, thanks.
So talking about, you were talking about the power and corrupting absolutely and stuff like that. So I heard you on Word Balloon talk about this, and I would like you to, if you can, reiterate it for our listeners, your philosophy on Superman standing for the American way.
Yeah.
I really appreciated the way you put it.
Oh, thanks. I don't remember what I said on that show, but I know what I feel about it.
Yeah.
I know that whenever you see Superman's truth, justice, and the American way slogan, on the page somewhere, you kind of see this ripple of discontent online, like people get pissed. And it just kind of tells me that it doesn't mean to other people what it does to me. Like it's not meant to be a statement of nationalistic mentality. It's not meant to be that. I mean, Superman does not represent the American government at any given moment in history. He doesn't, he's not trying to spread American influence around the world or anything like that. It's the belief that the founding ideals of the United States should apply everywhere. Like this, the idea of all people being created equal, of the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, just the inherent belief in equality of all people. Those things should apply everywhere. And even though here in America, that dream has yet to be realized. It's a belief that it can happen. And yeah, that's what it means to me. It means the dream that America is founded upon, like the truest, most ideal version of that is what he believes in.
And that's exactly what you said on Word Balloon, and I love it. So, yeah. It's fantastic.
I've never thought of it that way, I suppose, because obviously being British, a lot of people sort of feel left out of the whole truth, justice, and American way thing. So I didn't personally feel left out about it, but I didn't really think of it in that sort of way. So, but I have noticed now that they've kind of toned down the whole thing. So every time you see him say truth and justice, he doesn't say the American way anymore.
Yeah, I said American way in, what did I put it in? One of the Worlds of War books, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sadie was trying to explain to the rest of the crew there what it means to her, like what he means to her, and she does talk about the American way. But then in House of L, they leave it out because it's far in the future, and America doesn't exist the same way anymore. At one point, I think Theander says something like, "What does this even mean?" Like she's questioning whether he ever existed. Yeah. And she's like, "Truth, justice, in some nation that doesn't mean anything to us."
Yeah.
And they their statement that they say before flying off into battle, like they say, truth and justice, and that's become their mantra by that point. So yeah.
Here's another question for you, and this is one I always I feel like is always it's a different answer on who you ask. Who do you think is the real identity for Superman? Is it Clark? Is it Superman? Is it a third one?
It's not like either one of them is exactly a pretend version of himself. Like he is both those things, but it's funny because the version of Clark Kent back in the day when I was reading, Clark Kent was a total fiction, right? Like he was pretending to be this coward that didn't really exist. But these days, that's not the Clark Kent I've seen on the page in a while. So yeah, if this was like a super old comic and he's like, "Oh, hi Lois, I'm not feeling so good," and just like he's lying like all day long to everyone.
Right.
Yeah. That's definitely not him. But now the way I see him these days, his name is Clark. The version of Clark Kent that I see, the version of Superman that I see is Clark Kent. That was his name growing up. That's what his parents call him. That's what his friends called him. That's what his wife calls him when she's not calling him Smallville. You know, it's his name. That's what. And in my run, that you're about to see in action. That's the name that he gives people. He doesn't call himself Kal-El. He doesn't call himself Superman. I think the idea of him calling himself like I'm Superman.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever really would, because that name inherently means that he is more than the rest of us, and that's not what he believes. I mean, he is more than us, but he doesn't see himself that way. So unless there's a very specific reason why it has to be that way, he's never going to say I'm Superman in my book. He's in fact, I think at least twice in the first 3 issues, he introduces himself to someone as Clark.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I'm Clark and nothing's going to happen to you or something.
Cool.
And now that's why I think a lot of people, as you know, there's a lot of things in the Bendis run that get everyone pissed off. Because he changed a lot of the status quo. He made some big changes. In my opinion, kind of combining Superman and Clark into one publicly known figure is actually okay. That's one of those things that they've changed. Like there's been a very slow, gradual trajectory of Superman's development over the years. Like usually for a lot of characters, there's a status quo that never really changes. Like somebody dies or something happens and they come back to normalcy. Superman, there has been a very slow progression of like, okay, he's just this reporter. Now he and Lois are dating. Now he tells her his secret. Now they're married. Now there's a son.
Yeah. And
now he is given his real name to the world. And I feel like that kind of fits along that trajectory. And that was one aspect of the comics back in the day that I didn't really like. The fact that he's all about truth and justice in the American way, but he's lying to everyone constantly.
Yeah.
And it kind of doesn't fit, in my opinion. I even as a child, I thought that. I thought he never lies, but all he does is lie to everyone. And I kind of just put it in the back of my mind, like, well, whatever. He's still awesome and I love him. But that's one part of it that kind of didn't fit the version I saw of him in my head. So when he told Lois his identity, because I mean, back in the day, Lois was really lame. I really, you know, she was so like, Clark, you're such a lame. I'm not a fan. And then
it was really
Superman,
mean.
And Superman comes along and she's like, wow, you're so I love you. And it was just, to me, it didn't really reflect very well on her.
Yeah,
and,
no, I agree.
I don't think it reflected well on Superman either, because he's going to such insane lengths to cover up his identity. Like,
totally, he's constantly lying. And so, like this, I mean, when they came clean and got married and all that, now we can just forget about all that and get to like a relationship that is super awesome and iconic. And now that he's told his identity to the world, I understand it makes complicated things happen. Like now everyone knows about the planet. Everyone knows about Smallville, which is why Worlds of War, you know, that town became like it was. But in the long run of Clark's trajectory, I think it makes total sense. So I understand the frustration with people changing, with a writer, you know, changing just staple aspects of the character. But that one I was very pleased with.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
He is Superman, but his name is Clark, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. I when you're reading sort of the old comics and watching the old films and TV series, it's kind of entertainment value, the whole him hiding his identity. But as time goes on, it kind of drowns out a little bit, and you just want something different. So I appreciated when Bendis did that, and when other writers have done that as well in the past.
Yeah, me too.
So, okay. Do you keep up with other current iterations of Superman? So other comics or comic series, TV series, films, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, lately I've been drowning in work, so I'm a little bit behind on the TV show. But I like that. So it's a Superman and Lois I've seen. They're a little, you know, there's a little teen angsty stuff there that I don't need.
Definitely.
But it's, you know, but the stuff I've seen, I like. I really like the, again, I'm way behind. So you guys know way more about the show than me right now, but I liked the like we're seeing another version of Earth in which there's like evil Superman and Lex, and I like the DC lore kind of stuff they're bringing in. I'm curious to see where that stuff goes. I like the idea of there being two sons in which one has powers and one doesn't. I feel like eventually they'll power up John as well. They'll mine this dynamic for a while, get all the drama they can out of it, and then at some point they'll change it all up by bringing John some powers. I would imagine that's what I would do. I mean, if he never gets his powers, that would be kind of lame. If it was always, if there's always the one powerful one, the other one is always left behind. It's like that's going to get old by season 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But and Superman in that show is not quite as I envision him. Like he makes a lot of mistakes that I don't see. Like I always want Superman to be this aspirational character, whatever he's doing.
Yes.
I don't want to see him kind of screwing it up as a dad, like doing things that I'm yelling at the TV. No, Tony, you're not supposed to do that. Like, why are you bringing one son to the fortress and not the other one? He's still your son. Like,
that's what Evan said actually.
Yeah, like that's really frustrating. It's like it's so lame. John is so left out, and it's there's stuff like that where I feel like Superman wouldn't do that. I feel like he wouldn't be getting wine drunk all the time with his wife.
Yeah.
There's all these things that happen that just kind of don't fit who Superman is. But it's it's a TV show, and I'm liking it very much. I still like the way he depicts Superman. I play the Injustice games.
Nice.
I still watch the animated series with my son sometimes, like either Batman or Superman. Those are both great shows.
That's my favorite Superman show of all time. The animated
it's great.
Series,
It's legit great. I love that show. And let's see what else. I am a little behind on my reading as far as what my DC, my esteemed colleagues are doing. I know what Tom's doing. He and I have been working very closely together. So I've read the stuff that is yet to come that Tom has done. And I'm really excited for everyone to see what's coming there.
Excited too.
So, yeah.
How about films? So obviously you had all the Zack Snyder's Justice League and
I have. I've seen all those. And before I say anything, what did you guys think about the Snyder cut?
I loved it. It was good. I think.
Honestly, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the original Justice League just didn't make any sense because they cut too much out of it. And when you watch it, there were things or actions that they did where you just don't really understand or see the point of what they've done or included certain families and things like that. But yeah, this one made a lot more sense. And I think the 4 hours really allowed Zack Snyder the time to pan it all out.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely insanely long, but I really liked all the development they gave all the characters. I love that Cyborg's kind of the heart of it. And tons of stuff about it I loved. Aside from the length, I don't really have any issues with it at all. I love the operatic. I mean, I think everyone has a pretty clear sense of Zack Snyder's visual sensibilities now, as far as like the color schemes he likes to use and the constant slow-mo and things like that. But it makes it really operatic and dramatic and just bad. I just really love it. When the Justice League one came out, we were on tour for that one too, and I went to see it at the theater with a bunch of friends. And I'm the comic guy. Even then, this is before I was writing big DC books, but everyone knew me as a comic guy still. And I didn't want to dump water on everyone coming out of there, so I was like, "Yeah, man, it was fun." Other people kind of liked it. At the time, I was just like, no, it's just not good. And Henry Cavill's upper lip just haunted my nightmares.
Same.
I couldn't believe Warner Brothers let it come out looking like that. I'm like, this is such trash. Like, what's happening? So I'm so glad that this version is out there and that eventually the other one will kind of get swept away.
We hope.
Yes, hope so.
So, visually, I've always loved literally all of Zack Snyder's films. Visually look incredible. Yeah. Like he's definitely more of a visual guy than a story guy, in my opinion, as far as where his strengths lie. Man of Steel, BVS, everything looks perfect. Whether you like the characterizations or not, I love the way they all look.
Yeah.
And I liked Man of Steel more than a lot of people. The big fundamental thing with that one was the John Kent treatment, where he became the voice of doubt, the voice of just don't save people. You shouldn't save people.
Yeah.
You should protect yourself. That's just completely backwards of what John Kent's supposed to be. And to me, his body came from Krypton, but his sense of what parents are came from the Kents.
Yeah.
And the idea that he was trying to weigh these different versions of what their fathers are, I don't know, it didn't make sense to me. But aside from that, I liked it, and I liked the Snyder cut of Justice League quite a lot.
Yeah, Man of Steel is my favorite Superman film, so yeah, I love Zack Snyder and all the stuff that he's done with the characters. But sort of moving on to the comic books that you've written. So we'll start with Future State, Superman, Worlds of War, and I'm going to kind of combine the two issues into one with the sort of questions that we have for you, because we've kind of reviewed this on the site and also on the podcast, I think, before. So yeah, so just to reiterate, we love the story, or I did anyway, I'm not speaking for everybody else. Superman had such an iconic look, which I think I need to see in live action, but I'm also a sucker of seeing Superman's legacy told through somebody else. So you said the name of the girl, Sadie. So yeah, sorry, I couldn't remember her name. But yeah, in this case, it was Sadie, and also the people that were in the sort of support group of people that have been saved by Superman. So you kind of touched on this before as well. There's a focus on Clark Kent being the hero that saved her, which was really nice. And it's not every day we get to see Clark being the hero and doing sort of the heavy lifting. What made you want to put the focus on him like that?
It was kind of the statement that he would be Superman without the powers. Like I've always felt that the powers should not be the point of Superman or the point of the story. Like the powers are only there to illustrate how inherently good and incorruptible he is. You know, I want to see Superman with his powers illustrate why he's so good at his core, not just look how hard he can punch or like, look how fast he moves. So, and I wanted to see, and I wanted to put that troll in there and have that on the page, have that debate, like, no, Superman's the best because he's so powerful. And she's the voice of reason, the one who actually says, no, Clark can't save me. I didn't need him to save me off of a building.
Yeah.
And the other kid's like, no, that's not true. And I wanted to put that on the page. And then the second issue shows like what she meant and what Clark Kent did, and illustrate that Clark had such admiration for this homeless guy, and puts him on this pedestal and shows him to the world holds him up to and shows him to the world as this paragon of virtue, and like how we should all aspire to be him. The fact that he died without a pot to piss in after ostensibly a life of failures, and died with nothing and no one, didn't change that at all. The fact that Clark had admired this person so much, it was a Clark Kent move, you know, like the fact that Clark would find somebody like that and be with him in his final moments and then tell his story to the world. That just, to me, that just kind of sums up who Superman is. Yeah.
And well, yeah, that was, it was kind of a personable moment for Clark as well. So we don't usually see him focus on someone like that, or sort of the little man. We kind of see him just focus on fighting the aliens that he's fighting, and things like that.
That's totally true. But the moments that mean the most to me are the moments with the jumper in an All-Star Superman. You know, like I wanted to show something like that moment where he's and kind of blow it out into a larger story. Like the moment where he saves the girl who's obviously been crying, and I don't know. That's just, I mean, that moment means a lot to me.
Yeah. In the first issue for Worlds of War, there's a few lines that I wanted to bring up, and I just kind of want to know if you're going to explore it in what you've got coming up in Superman and also on your run in Action Comics. But there's a mention of after what his son did to Metropolis, talking about John Kent and also the Krypton era. Are we going to see those sort of stories unfold?
Well, that thing about Superman of Metropolis, about Sean's story, that was a reference to what happened in Superman of Metropolis, where John like shrinks down Metropolis and puts it in the bottle and all that. So I don't know for a fact that Tom's going to be doing that in his run. So I can't speak to it. I would say probably not. But that's just my opinion as a fan and a friend of Tom's. I don't think that's something that his version of John coming forward would do.
Yeah.
And even when we were talking behind the scenes before that book came out, I mean, I'm not the boss of Sean. I'm not going to tell him what to do or not do, but I did say, you better have a good reason, because that seems like a terrible idea. Like what's the thing that would cause John to do such a traumatic thing? I mean, it's almost like you've almost just blown up the city. Like, yeah, those people exist somewhere, but they're never going to see their loved ones again, potentially. So there would have to be like an insanely good reason. So I was not entirely on board with that idea, but then like Sean did a beautiful job in the execution.
Yeah.
But I don't see Tom doing that in continuity, in my opinion, but we'll see. But that's what that referred to. And the Krypton era, that was one of the people at the memorial talking about what she predicted was going to happen. Like, she thought that Superman, like, there's nothing, why should we assume that everyone from Krypton was awesome like Superman and Supergirl were, like, just because they were nice to us? Like, everyone else could be these super despots all around the world, all around the universe. Like, and she believes that without Superman, without the L's here to protect us, that was coming for them too. I do like that idea, and I'm not going to say I'm never going to do it, but I'm really excited for you to see the first issue of Action, because it does kind of make the world bigger, and it's just like a little tease of what's coming. Every issue the world gets a little bigger every issue. We'll see a little more of what's coming ahead. But I will say that I didn't put anything in Worlds of War just for fun. Like, I didn't want to tell a story that didn't count. Yeah. I want people, like, if somebody has like all my comics all lined up, I want every one of them to count and belong together and to inform each other, you know. So there's nothing in Worlds of War that's not important. And same for House of L, actually, especially now that I get to do a follow-up in the June annual. There's going to be, we're going to kind of tie current continuity in with House of L somewhat.
Awesome.
That was going to be one of the questions when it came to that issue, but yeah. What made you want to use Mongol as the main sort of villain in this story? Or in the war section?
I feel like Mongol's a little underserved. I've seen stories, even he's been a part of some iconic stories, like the most obvious would be the Alan Moore Man Who Has Everything, but and you know, he was in the Return of Superman. He's been in these really iconic moments, but there is some of those stories in which he could have been honestly replaced by just about any other villain.
It's so true.
You know, he's just kind of big and strong and cackly, and he's evil because he just is. And
you
know, I want to see what his motivations are. I want to see more of him. I want to learn more about who Mongol is. And I'm not saying we saw a lot of that yet in Worlds of War, but I mean, the next arc I'm doing is called War World Rising, so it's not a huge secret that Mongol is involved. He's a character that I've seen in the past portrayed kind of one-dimensional, and I think there's room, especially now that this is technically a new Mongol. This is the son of Mongol. Now is an opportunity to really make him way cooler and more interesting. So we're gonna try to do that.
I did have a continuity question that I was wondering about, is because in the 2000s, which is my favorite run of Superman, it was Mongol's son. So is this the original Mongol's grandson, or is this a retcon where it's the original Mongol's son again?
Technically, it would be his grandson.
Okay, sweet, awesome.
So the way
I was in my head canon.
Yeah, exactly. Like in my head canon, I don't think we ever specifically say, but it does. Like the Bendis run did establish that Mongol is actually a title. Like Pharaoh or whatever, and it's and that it's actually a lineage, and so in my headcanon, this guy's the grandson.
Awesome.
That's great.
There's more to that too. We also establish, I'll say, So you guys read the Phil Hester issues?
Yeah.
Yes.
In the second issue of that, at the end, you see Mongol with a couple of toadies, a couple of like lieutenants.
Yeah.
You're going to see those guys again too. And one of them, you see one with that only has one limb. It's like he's walking around on stumps and he has one arm. That character is one I'm very excited about. His name is Chadel, and he has been a servant of Mongol for generations. And he served 4 Mongols over the years, and he's this super bad fighter back in the day, or was. And even now that he's this limbless freak, it's so like the oldest living war zune that there is, he still commands ultimate respect. And also in Worlds of War, there was a moment in which they say that Superman doesn't deserve to wear a chain of War World. The chain is a huge, huge deal in my upcoming run. So look for that. Okay. Like a chain is like a status thing. So that'll become extremely important and for like the next year or 2 years, whatever.
Reading your stuff so far, it's very clear the stylistic difference in your writing from Bendis, because Bendis is very dialogue driven, but in everything you're doing in your narration and stuff, I'm just like, there's like chapters of stuff we're not seeing that you've written out. Like, yeah, like, you can just feel the denseness of the world building.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, I've got reams of stuff that they're not going to fit on the page. There's I'm making a language that is in theory that you could actually use, although it's complicated as it's like this, and it's not traditionally written. It's like this, like every sentence is like a rune tree, where like as you add words, it becomes like this more complicated symbol kind of. So I want it to feel, I wanted to make the DC universe feel older and just deeper and bigger and but also newer, and we're seeing stuff we've never seen before. And yeah, I'm trying to make it really, I'm trying to just make it all count. I know that Last God is probably, one of the big reasons why I got the gig, and because I'm willing to spend 10 times too much time on the world building, and I want to give this book the Last God treatment and make it feel just as deep as I can, and just make everything seem so like big and epic.
Well, that time pays off though, because obviously you've got this language that you're building and all these little things, like you said, with the chains. I like things like that, where it's kind of dribbled in one of the issues and then it turns out to be a really important part of the story. I like looking out for things like that.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you. I hope that's the case here. I'm definitely putting in a lot of details that will matter later.
Speaking of all the world building stuff, we'll move on to House of Owl, but there's a huge plethora of brand new characters in House of Owl. How did you why are there so many? How did you come up with all their sort of stories? And obviously they are descendants of Superman, but they clearly have you've already thought of their backstory, it seems, even though they're only introduced in just one issue so far.
Yeah, I mean, it was only a 40-page story, but for that story, and they brought me the idea. They were like, we want to do House of L 1,000 years in the future, because Superman's going to be in this other book and Wonder Woman, and here's what he looks like. So if we don't use him, here's what he looks like if you use him here, and go nuts. Like they're just like, that's they were going to do the book regardless, but they wanted to leave a lot of the details to me.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I made like a genealogy of Superman assuming he would still be alive, but also older, because I've seen versions of Superman, as we all have, in which he's in the future and looks completely unchanged. But in this, they wanted him to be older. So like, okay, so he's alive, but he's older. So let's start with that. And I made a genealogy of different children he's had over the centuries with different people. Not a lot. Everyone's thinking, oh, like I've gotten slammed online, like he's just knocking up everyone around. And that's not the case. These are not his children we're seeing. We're seeing his descendants. So in theory, they could all be John's descendants as well. I will say that in the genealogy that I wrote, with all the world building, I did have him remarrying centuries later, after Lois has died.
Okay.
He remarries.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah, but it's not like they leave each other or like he turns right around. It's like an insane amount of time has gone by.
Yeah.
But that gives us descendants that are from. He's got the Tamaranian descendant, although that is actually that's from a human. She has a human dad. It's not. Well, anyway, I won't get into the spoilers, but so there's her. There are kids who come from a line of people called Philosians that are going to get introduced in my series. There's a new race that you'll meet. So that is a spoiler, I guess. So there you go. Heard it here first.
Awesome. Philosians.
Breaking news. I actually wrote a list of all the different descendants, and I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about them, but I'm gonna not bother with that because I don't want you to spoil anything.
No. Go ahead. If there's anything I can't, I'll just I may bow out of a few questions, but I'm happy to answer what I can.
Okay. Well, it's just sort of, I'll name the character and then just tell us a little bit about their backstory if you can. So you've got Carnal, who is the rather barbarian-looking one.
Yeah, Connell is the one member of the crew that you see, aside from Brainiac 4, who is not actually blood descended from Clark.
Okay.
Connell he actually married into the name. He was like a poor fighter, and at some point he married Allura, who is the Allura of the War World Engines, the one who leads the Valkyries in that issue.
Yep.
She's a descendant of Clark via the Philosian line, and at some point she and Connell married, and Khan did not really have a proper name, and when they married, he was granted the Al name through marriage.
And none of this is going to show up in a comic.
And
you already have it all in your head. Just you're not reading this; you just have it all.
That was the plan. That was the plan then.
Okay.
But now we're doing the follow up, the annual in June. So so you will get more details then.
Because you just rattled off an insane amount of detail. That's just if it's
Yeah.
not going to be published anywhere, it's insane.
There's a Superman encyclopedia begging for this chapter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that's Connell. So he's part of War World Prime, and he's a fighter. There's a very warlike culture. So he's kind of this brute. And even though he looks the most physically imposing, he's actually a little bit underpowered compared to some of the other ones as far as just sheer genetic power,
Yeah. So then we have Theander, who is probably one of my favorites from the Descendants, I have to say.
Yeah, she's great, and she's the daughter of a Tamaranian queen, who we don't meet yet, and Brandon Kent. Brandon, who had the regular clothes and the long hair. Theander she's raised to be a princess on Tamaran, but she's also been on Earth a lot, and she understands. She's been raised to know more about her legacy over there, and she's kind of not. She's a very fiery personality. She kind of doesn't like the expectations that have been put on her. She's kind of like F you to both sides. Like she kind of doesn't want to be queen necessarily, and she doesn't want to be told that you have expectations as a member of this great house either. At that point in her life, she's very young. It's hard to tell because of the differences in races and all that. It's hard to tell, but she's the youngest. She's just barely an adult in that book.
Okay.
And when we see her actually in June again, we're going to see her younger. Like that one takes place a few years earlier.
Cool.
Which, if I may, I'll talk about Brandon Kent next. Brandon's her dad, and we're going to see him in his heyday in June. Brandon used to be Superman. Used to be Earth's Superman.
Okay.
And by the time we see him in House of L, he's passed that mantle on to Ronan, and he kind of doesn't have patience anymore for the pageantry of the costumes and all the, the ambassadorial side of the gig. So he doesn't have any patience for the costumes anymore, and he's just a guy. He's gone back to work the farm at home. He wears farm clothes. He wears whatever the hell he wants. He wears farm clothes, grows his hair out. He's kind of retired, quote unquote. He's still a guy that does great things and does good work. He doesn't call himself Superman anymore, and he doesn't give a shit. I really love Brandon a lot.
And so from what we saw in this issue, he reminded me of Jonathan Kent quite a lot, and that's probably down to the farm clothes and the whole sort of
the way he talks. He also has less of a weighty way the way that he speaks. He just is kind of has Theander has his like rebellious streak, I guess.
Yeah.
We're going to see him in the June annual. We'll see him in his heyday when he is Superman. So on that cover, that's Brandon in the front.
Awesome.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out for the cover. So we've got Ronan then, who is, well, from what I guess, he is the current Superman.
Yeah, Ronan and his sister Rowan are twins, and they are the closest relatives that Brandon has. So Brandon is they are. Sorry, in the final genealogy, I want to say they are first or second cousins. But Brandon and Ronan are very close related, and he's the latest. He's a brand new Superman at that time. And after the events of June, you'll see Brandon passes the mantle on to him, and he's wielding it very capably. Cool. And his sister Rowan. Also kind of never had any aspirations to being that world's Supergirl or Superwoman, but very early on she was tapped with the Blue Lantern ring. So awesome. she functions as a Blue Lantern. That's kind of that's how she sees her responsibilities. Like she sees herself as the Blue Lantern, but she also has a lot of loyalty to her family too. So when she powers up and armors up, she like the S shield is on. It supersedes her Blue Lantern symbol.
Cool. So she looked amazing in that. You don't really see very much of her in the issue, but she looked amazing. And
we're going to see more of her in June too. I really like her. If I had another 20 pages, would have seen a lot more of some of these characters.
What's it like, sort of having to cut down things? So obviously, with all this backstory that you've got for all these characters, you've had to kind of fit it into the 40-page issue. What was that like?
I mean, it's expected. Like I always grossly overwrite, and I always start with a pretty detailed. Well, first a synopsis, and then I do the outline, and then I'll break the outline into what we call breakdowns, where it's like a page by page what you're seeing on the page, just to see what fits and what has to go. And even then, I'm usually pretty optimistic on what fits on the page, and I have to trim it down even more before I start scripting. But with this book in particular, I knew that I was going to have to cut a ton of rather that I was going to have to write a ton of stuff that would make the book feel real and would make the characters feel real, but would not make it onto the page. And you try to communicate a lot of those things about those characters in very concise ways. Like, for example, Brandon's clothes. The fact that he's just dressed like a normal guy and has the long hair, that sets him apart from everyone else. And I wanted everyone to see, this is the guy that doesn't really give a shit, but he loves his daughter very clearly based on some of the small conversations that we see. Like, he'd do anything for her, obviously. And in her reaction to his death, we see how much he means to her too, and see how fiery she is. And that's also communicated in her powers, the way her powers manifest, because it's different than the others. She has kind of like this hybrid power, and we try to communicate as much as I can with the characters in the way they speak, but also in little things that happen or in their design. So you just have to find very concise ways to communicate those ideas rather than give them these big extended scenes, because there's no space for that. I wanted this to basically be an action book.
Awesome.
And try to communicate those little things about the characters, like in any little way that you can. And some of that is communicated through the poem as well. The iambic pentameter thing that I kind of fit in there to make it feel, epic, like you're seeing the fall of this great house.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks.
I think you should pitch to DC at the end of your run to do a Cimmerillion sort of situation, and you can call it the Superillion, and that's for free. You can have that.
Nice. Hey, I like that. When I was writing Last God, Cimmerillion was my Bible. I really, awesome. It's not as fun to read as some of Tolkien's stuff as far as just being a story, but it's just a masterclass in the world building. He makes this entire world in this thing. So yeah, the book's important to me.
Cool.
With all this sort of, well, we've got all these different characters. With the designs, was that sort of your mind, or did you work with the artist Scott on that design? Did he sort of pitch ideas to you?
I gave Scott a lot of detail about not a lot, like probably about a paragraph on each character, like their background, what they look like in my mind. I didn't micromanage him as far as the design. I said that Brandon's in plain clothes and he identifies as a farmer. He's wearing normal stuff. I said that Superman, Ronan, should wear, his costume should be the most similar to the iconic Clark costume.
Yeah.
I wanted a Rowan in armor. Honestly, if I could have any change, I would like to see Rowan more armored up and more like just wearing more stuff, all blue, But I want to micromanage. It turned out really great. I think Scott wanted us to see more of the Blue Lantern costume underneath.
Yeah.
Clark's costume in your thing was awesome. I loved it.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Clark's costume in the book was awesome.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was all Mikkel. I did say I wanted to be wearing very little, and he's just a slave, straight up, like just fighting in the mud.
Oh, I meant the House of L costume.
Oh, thank you. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean that variant cover where it's like a painting of him, frame worthy, so good.
Exactly. No, that's a beautiful cover. Somebody bought that original, the pencil, and showed me online. It looks friggin' incredible.
Awesome.
But yeah, that was a really great design. And that was one we inherited that design from the other Superman book. They sent us that.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that concept for that particular costume came to us. That had already been decided for the other book, I guess, by that point.
Very cool.
So, and Connell, of course, is like a warrior. He's a gladiator. So we wanted to have by this point in history, the Philosian culture is very warlike, and that's what their legacy comes from. And so we wanted them to have a very, arena kind of look.
Awesome.
Go on, Evan.
I was just gonna say, talking about your current stuff, like the stuff that takes place after the future state, and if we have any more future state stuff, we can come back to it. But I was wondering, does your run take place after John has returned from the Legion of Superheroes permanently, or is he still flip-flopping back and forth?
We don't expressly say, but in my mind, again, just in my brain canon, because I mean, another writer could turn it around for their own needs on the Legion book, but in the way I see it in my mind, it's after he's finished his work with Legion.
Okay. And that's nice because I mean, he's in the future, so you could just write 70 years of stories of him in the future, and then he comes back to the present. And then you pick up your run,
Yeah, we wanted them to look just a tiny bit older than he did when he left.
Okay.
So yeah, he should, in my mind, he's done with Legion by this point. But we don't ever expressly say, because I figured somebody might need him in the future again for another story. So
okay,
the opening is there for somebody to turn that around. But in my mind, he's finished.
And that might answer another one of my questions, because I had some questions about your status quo in relation to the end of Bendis' status quo, where we see John has a girlfriend in the future, and I really wanted to see a meet the parents situation with her coming home and to meet Lois and Clark. I guess I don't know if that's going to happen. And then with Connor Kent, he was hanging out on the farm, but now he's in the Suicide Squad. So
Yeah, I know.
I don't know how much you can say about any of that stuff, but
like, man, I shouldn't talk about the relationship stuff because I know Tom has very specific things in mind for that.
Okay.
So I hate
good enough for me.
Yeah, I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to spoil anything he's got. But let's see, Connor thing. Yeah, I really like Connor, the character. I'd love to use him. I do use John a lot in the upcoming run, and it's having Connor around too. It just gets a little complicated, and we've got Lois, Supergirl, John, Crypto all around, very present in the stuff that I have going on, and Connor was just kind of filling up the room a little too much, and plus they so there's not really a place for Connor in my story, sadly. I would love to write Connor in the future, and I will at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I really like that character a lot, but he's not doesn't have a place in the current run.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, so we'll go on to Superman 30 and the series as a whole, but this pretty much kicks off a brand new story arc for the Superman title, and I know obviously we know that Tom Taylor will be taken over in a few issues' time, but yeah, Superman and Superboy answer this distress call from a long-lost friend of Superman's, and that all sort of turns out to be a misunderstanding, according to the locals of the planet Thakram. I apologize if I've said that wrong.
Right.
But yeah, they're not quite convinced. They decide to take a look. Now, we haven't really, usually in the podcast, we go into real depth on the whole issue as a whole, but we haven't had a chance to do that before speaking to you. So I kind of wanted to do that now. So what did you guys think of Superman 30? Just to put you on the spot, because you got the writer right here as well.
Yeah, no bullshit, honest thoughts.
Well, absolutely. It was really, I really enjoyed what you were saying earlier about your connection to your son. I definitely felt that after the roller coaster ride that was Brian Michael Bendis' run, you've kind of slowed things down and you're examining the relationship between Jonathan and Clark a lot more, which I've absolutely loved. So I really felt that was prominent in this issue.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, it's kind of a love letter to my son, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
This made my day.
Oh, thank you.
That's the best Superman family page we've seen in a while. I love it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Scott crushed it.
And then something I've noticed across, I guess, most of your Superman stuff, we're seeing a lot of like insectoid like aliens. Is that you're doing, or is that your artist doing?
Let's see. Let's see which. Are you talking about the things that are in the Hester run as well?
I think so. Like we've seen, the things coming out of the breach, and then I feel like
right.
a lot of the aliens we're seeing, like these guys, like they're all
right.
You know, everybody's got like 6 limbs. Is that you, or is that the artist?
Well, that's all the artist.
Okay.
I've been very clear with my artist though that I don't want to go. You know, you go to Japan and you're like, this place is crazy. Like everything's so different here. You know, like I imagine going to another galaxy where you've got a whole nother, you know, life form, like a whole other species, another culture, how insane everything would be. I told him I don't want to go across the galaxy and see 2-armed, 2-leg normal dudes.
Nice. Okay.
Or anything even remotely close to that. I don't want them speaking English. I don't, you know, it's got a.
So it's not Star Trek.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to see bumpy head humans. I just don't.
I like it.
And it's not like me. I'm not laying down the law on anybody. It's not, we're colleagues. They don't work for me, but
right.
But I give them like ideas basically, but then they run with it and make their own designs. There was one design that Scott did for the aliens that looked really cool, but then we started getting into I kind of kicked the tires a little bit as far as, well, how do they move fast though? Like we talked a little bit about the mechanics of their bodies and all that.
Cool.
Try to find something that worked really well. And so he came up with this idea of a thing that could both run and walk and move quickly and fight and all that and do the things we need them to do, but not look remotely human. And there's also a design. One of the characters, Falder Purnim, is a little bit more, is much more humanoid than the others. And there's enough similarities in their bone structure and head structure that you could see how at one point they came from the same race.
It's so cool because it speaks to what you were saying. Like, it's like jazz. If you take out one thing, the whole thing changes. And I could immediately tell once you got on the book that we're seeing all these, 6-armed aliens and stuff. It's like, this is totally,
right.
It's totally your imprint on it. It's very cool.
Well, thanks. I cannot wait for you to see Warworld, man.
Okay.
There's so much culture there, and I can't wait to show more of that. So yeah. Anyway, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I'm leaving a lot of it up to the artists. I'm trying not to micromanage too much, but basically I tell them what they have to do and what their culture is like, and then they kind of imagine what they see what they see at that point,
Yeah. So I admit I'm not familiar with this alien race and, well, or the planet. I'm not sure if you two guys are. That's the ones that featured in this issue. But for the newbies like me, can you sort of explain the backstory a little bit as to what happened between Superman and, is it Korath-Damim? I don't know if I've said his name.
Korath-Damim.
I thought this was brand new. Is this brand new?
It is brand new.
Yeah,
it's
all
all new stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So in the distant past, when Superman was closer to John's age, he was out there on this adventure, and this alien corpse, like this gigantic alien corpse with like a spacesuit, falls out of the sky and strikes the planet Thakram, and it's teeming with this black, like sentient parasite that presumably killed it and is like animating the body. So it's like this gigantic, like Venom / Godzilla thing that is just.
I want to see that film.
What's that?
I want to see that film.
Yeah, exactly. Just tearing its way across the landscape, killing everything, and one of the this exile Thakramite, like a highwayman, basically like a pirate, like a desert pirate, and Falder Purnim, who is an alien even to them, like from a nearby system, like the scientist, and Superman kind of team up to take this thing down. And so they kill it, sort of. I mean, it's a corpse, and they think that this thing that's in it is like a parasite. Like they managed to destroy it.
Yeah.
And its body is stuck at the bottom of this chasm, and then the Thakramites make Korath-Damim, this pirate, their king at that point, because his strength is valued above all else. And then Superman and Falder go off and do their thing. Falder kind of stays behind and studies the one who, they call the corpse the one who fell, is what they call this giant monster. And Falder stays behind and studies it because he feels like there could be more of the what he calls the shadow breed, the infection thing that was animating the body. He feels like it might still be out there somewhere. So he stays behind to study it and becomes kind of not one of them, but stays with them. Korath-Damim becomes their leader, and Superman leaves, leaving them a little communicator. Like, if this thing ever comes back, call me, because this thing is super bad. You guys can't take it without me. So he leaves something a way for them to contact him if they need him. And then, decades later, they do call him, and that's when we see happen next.
Yeah. So when we spoke on Twitter, you said there was a horror element to this story, which is clear from the get-go, or specifically the last few pages. Are there any sort of specific horror influences that you lean towards for this story arc?
For this story, yeah, there was any kind of, just basically it's a new spin on the puppet master trope. There's a couple different versions with that title. There's a movie called The Puppet Masters, I think. That's about an alien, like an alien parasite that invades Earth, it's invasion of the body snatchers, basically.
Yeah.
And some people online saw the design of the thing, and they're like, "Oh, well, it's a symbiote, like Venom." And there's an aspect of that, but it's not the same. I can see why people would just kind of glance at it and think that, but it's for one thing, it's a hive mind. It's more like the Brood. If you're going to compare it to a Marvel thing, it's like the Brood, in which they like impersonate the people that they invade. You know?
Reminds me of Starro.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, the trope of like the body snatcher is kind of what I'm playing on. It's just a very different take on it. So that it was, it's kind of assumed that there's more of them out there somewhere. And like, we just see one body that had this thing in it. But you kind of suggest that there's more out there.
Cool.
So yeah, it is like a symbiote in a way, but it's also a hive mind. There's no single identity to it. And the way they steer the bodies around, like it's not a symbiotic relationship at all. Like they're just using those bodies and steering them around like vehicles.
And pretending to be the actual person they're inhabiting.
Yeah, and they feed on light and sound. Light and heat. So everywhere they go, if you notice when they have the storyteller in the building at the end, when they start to reveal themselves, like you can start to see the storyteller's breath in there. Like they see when their true self comes out, it gets very cold.
Yeah.
So
cool.
So with this one, you've got a few issues left because obviously Tom Taylor's taken over the Superman, Son of Kal-El title. What can you tell us about what's to come in this series?
Well, it's only 3 issues. Like it was going to be, initially I was supposed to be on Superman I am on Superman from March through June, I guess. And it was going to be a 4-issue arc, but then the calendar changed in such a way that the books that were going to be my March books became my April books. So Daniel's first issue and Scott's first issue should have come out in March. At least that was the original plan last year. And things kind of got shuffled around. So now we did the 2-issue arc with Phil Hester. That kind of got added very late. So that's why the Golden Age is such a short story that crosses both titles. So Golden Age just kind of sets up both titles, and then this one is only 3 issues, and then action will be ongoing forever. What's to come? I will say that as you saw in the early pages and the last couple of pages, the whole thing is kind of like a letter to John. Based on the things that he told him in the Golden Age, when he was talking about his own doubts about his own worth and how like he's Superman, no one else can be. And this 3-issue arc kind of sums up Superman's retort to that, about like trying to show John remind John of his worthiness.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of a statement to the fans who don't think that John's up to it, or who misunderstood what I said in Infinite Frontier about John, because I never meant to. In Infinite Frontier, that short story, Spectre. Have you read that? You guys read that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great.
I won't spoil anything,
Yeah,
but Spectre kind of talks about John like he's this great threat, and how he's been through so much, and he sees on the horizon, he sees dark times with John in the Superman role. And Wonder Woman responds with faith, and she's like, no, he's his father's son. He's his parents' son. He's this amazing person, and he's going to do fine. And her faith was rewarded over the course of those 6 pages. At the end of it, we see John being the best version of himself, like risking himself to help this monster, like save this enemy, which in my mind answered, Spectre's question about John's worthiness. Like he proved it just now. But this is another statement of that. This shows what John's made of, and Superman as well. It's not just John's story. This shows them working together. I really wanted to show an adventure with the 2 of them together. So yeah, this adventure represents what these 2 guys mean to each other.
Cool.
As far as nitty-gritty details on the monster and stuff, I probably shouldn't spoil too much because it gets pretty cool. I want you to see it for the first time on the page.
Yeah,
cool.
So I know, obviously, at the time of recording Action Comics, 1030 isn't actually out yet, but we have read it.
Oh, good.
So we wanted to talk about that a little bit, but not in too much detail, but we will post the episode on Tuesday, so after the embargo lifts, so it's all
great. Okay, cool.
out and kosher. So
I'm so glad. I'm going to talk about that book. It's great.
Yeah. So again, we haven't really talked about this issue just yet, well, because it would have come next week. But yeah, if you haven't had the chance to read this issue yet, please don't listen to this part of the episode and just skip back and come back until you have, because we're going to probably spoil it quite a lot for you. But obviously not the rest of the series. So what did you guys think of it?
Loved it. I really enjoyed, like you were saying, the world building with Mongol, and you've got all this dynastic stuff going on, and the chains, which normally has a bad connotation that means really good things for their culture, and the cloak guy at the end dumping out all the stuff. I'm not going to say what he dumped out, but that was awesome. That was
thanks.
So good.
Christmas on War World.
Yeah.
How about you, Ashley? What did you think?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate my excitement for more Mongol. He's been one of my favorite villains for a long time. Obviously, he was voiced by Eric Roberts in the Justice League Unlimited cartoon, if I'm not mistaken. So he's definitely entrenched in a lot of interest in lore. And I'm a big Green Lantern guy as well, and he had a great run in that. So I'm just really excited to have this character flushed out a lot more.
Yeah, thanks. I can't wait to show you what we're doing, man. I'm stoked for it. He's the character is really establishing kind of a cult of personality in War World in ways that his predecessors did not. So I'm very excited to show what that means.
So in this one, Superman's powers are sort of decaying, and he's going through these tests with Batman and the Atom. So is this? Well, this is obviously after the breaches in Phil Hester's issues. So we know that Amanda Waller is responsible for the breaches. So is any more of that going to sort of play out? Are we going to see Superman sort of question or face off against or with Amanda Waller? Without.
Damn. I'm sorry not to answer. I probably shouldn't answer just yet.
No problem.
Maybe not directly, but she's this omnipresent character. And in fact, I'm not even certain that she's like, I don't even know I know the answer yet, because there's a couple more issues yet to write in this particular arc.
Okay.
A couple ways it could go, but she's very aware of the things that are coming in this arc. So she's around.
Okay. So it was great to see sort of John and Damian back together on the rooftop, sort of eating snacks and just having a one-way heart-to-heart, I guess. So they're very much their father's sons, and the whole worrying thing with John, sort of worrying and warning his dad about back in the previous issues of Action Comics, where this is one of the last documented stories, and all the stuff that he's describing is kind of happening. So is this sort of to do with, well, it's really hard to ask without trying to get you to spoil what's coming up, but with Tom Taylor's run, does this sort of link into the reason why he's kind of stepping down as Superman and passing the mantle on?
Yeah, Action Comics, the events of Action Comics basically lead to the events of Tom's run in a way. So, I mean, the calendar worked out in such a way that they're overlapping a bit, but Tom's, I mean, the way Tom handled it is great, and you're not seeing, nothing should be really spoiled in his run. Yeah. But yeah, it's everything that you're seeing with John and his concerns about his dad being dead or whatever. That all leads to him taking over the fortress and everything in Tom's #1.
And here's a John and Damian question, and you don't have to get into any specifics, but in Dan Jurgens' run, we got some prophecies about John that were like, he's gonna be bad, or and then in Bendis's Legion run, we got prophecies about Damian, which is he's gonna be bad.
Right.
Touching on that at all, any, or are we gonna have to wait?
Not in this arc.
Okay.
There's important stuff coming down the road, like way down the road. Like I've got a plan for the series that goes way into the future.
Sweet.
And who knows how long it'll actually be on the book, but yeah, there's a good chance we'll see some of that not happen necessarily, but like there's there'll be some big moves down the road for John. At some point we'll see Tom's book and mine. I'm not sure how we're going to handle it yet as far as the crossover stuff, because we're going to see them kind of together again in the future. We have to work out how that's going to happen exactly. Whether the stories are going to be independent or if it's going to be like a handoff thing like we did back in the day.
Nice.
Yeah, but I'm not, I don't feel super beholden to that. I mean, we've already seen the future kind of rewritten in the Golden Age where Superman, he thinks his dad was about to die, and then he manages to not die, and because of John's part in it. Because I mean, the story, the version that John was reading then was a version that did not account for him being there. So it's not necessarily the truth, capital T. Yeah, as far as, I personally don't see John becoming evil. I mean, there could be, you know how comics work. It's always the illusion of change, and somebody gets their back broke or dies or whatever happens. Somebody goes bad, mind control, blah, blah, blah. But to me, John is just shows how, he just illustrates over and over again that he bounces back from anything. I mean, after everything he went through in the Bendis run where he went to the future and all that happened, he should have been broken by all that and come back and he should have come back wrecked, but he's still the same happy, fun, generous, gregarious kid that he was before. And which is why, I mean, a lot of the noise I see online every single day about the aging John, I kind of want to say, you know, he's not dead, bro. Like, he's still around. He's still himself, and he doesn't look as little and rascally and cute or whatever, but so instead he's a little bit more buff. He's a little taller, but he's still, when he and John are together, when he and Damian are together, Damian is still the scowly, you know, the Batman one, and John is still very much like he was. And I love that he still kind of seems like the younger one even now.
Yeah. Well, I just read this, and I mean, if people want, you know, classic Little John, it's still happening, you know.
Exactly. It's great. I love that series.
All right. Tasman, you got some more stuff?
I was going to say, without sort of giving too much away about the final page, we see these characters that we haven't seen before, and some of them kind of resemble, well, I thought they resembled, well, in particular, one character from House of Al, and there was talk of the dead Kryptonian language being used. What can you tell us about that?
About the character similarity to others, like physically?
Sort of just who they are, and the characters on the final page, sort of who they are and where they're from.
That's spoilery. That's spoilery.
I know. Yeah. Just when I said it,
I can't tell you, because over the next few issues, there's like this very slow reveal of who these people are.
Okay.
So you'll see. I'm sorry, I can't tell you, but it's,
we're just digging.
All right, I do have one last question, and then I know it's getting towards dinner time for you, so we don't want to hold up too much of your thing. But it's less of a question and more of just, I'm just going to leave this here, and you can do whatever you want with it. My two favorite Superman villains are Conduit and Imperiex, because I love Galactus, and Imperiex is like.
Are you the guy online that asked me to use Conduit?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't think so. But,
you don't know? Who should I ask?
If it was on Twitter, it's probably not me.
Okay.
Yeah, but I love those guys, because like Conduit's like, to me, he was always the Green Goblin because he knows Superman's identity, and that's kind of moot now, but whatever. And I love Galactus. You know, so Imperiex is, so I'm just going to say those are my two favorite villains, and I'm just going to leave that there for you.
Okay, nice. I will say I don't love the idea of villains that went to Clark's high school. Like it's that high school is just ground zero for bad guys.
Absolutely, small. Yeah,
it's been a bit retread, so I don't know. We'll see. Never say never.
Yeah,
Conduit is cool. Yeah. Well, Philip, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. It's been a pleasure picking your brains about Superman, and I hope we get to see. Well, I hope we can get you on the podcast again, perhaps towards the end of your run on the character, maybe.
Sincerely, I welcome you. Well, that's going to be, I think that might be a while from now. So hopefully before then.
In 10 years, we'll have you back.
Yeah.
Not that I'm welcoming the idea of you leaving already, but
holding out hope for a Dan Jurgen style run. But we'll see.
Yes.
That'd be awesome.
Oh, definitely amazing.
That's lasted like 20 years because he keeps coming back.
Yeah.
That dude's the man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, and thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
You've been listening to the Aspiring Kryptonians podcast. For more information about us, head over to our website over on theaspiringkryptonian.com, where you can find our social media handles, our weekly written comic reviews, and you can also contact us via the website. A huge thank you to you for taking the time to listen to the podcast, and until next week, we bid you farewell. And remember, we aren't birds and we aren't planes. We are the Aspiring Kryptonians.